right, we're going to get started here, and thanks for being here with me. We've got people in person, and we got people on Zoom as well. So I'll have the sound up so you guys on Zoom can unmute and ask questions if you have questions, things like that. And we're going to get going. So thanks for being here. We are going to talk about today is the company foundation. So kind of let me give you actually even a little bit of the background of what we're doing and what we're hoping to accomplish, those type of things. So the Peak Agent Training is a course that was designed, actually for me, I have been training this for about 15 years now that I have been doing this. I started with a different company, and then about, I guess, coming up almost on 6 years ago now, moved over to Everest and reformulated how the training and stuff has gone to create what we're going to talk about as part of we go through this. So I was telling Christian before the rest of you guys got here that we're doing this in a little bit of a unique way because of how COVID has affected things, meaning it used to be, so we have offices here in Utah, and we also have offices in California, in the Ventura County area. And I oversee the training for both Utah and California. And prior to last year at this time, in fact, this week, last year, I was supposed to be in California. So a year ago this week, I was supposed to head there to do the training, and we were kind of wondering the week before of like, should we still go and do it or should we not? And I was at the time going, yeah, I'm not really worried about anything. I'll totally go. Like, what's the big deal? And then a couple days later is kind of when everything all of a sudden started shutting down, and it was kind of like, and California became even worse as far as letting people come into the state. And if you were checking into a hotel, you couldn't do it with an out-of-state driver's license for a while. So anyway, as a result, what we did is started doing it all on Zoom. And initially, when I would go to California, I would go down there and train basically everything we're going to hit in this week and next week. I would do in a 1 week period down there. So I would be Monday through Thursday, all day, every day kind of a thing. And we decided that it would be better because I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of sick of Zoom personally. But as far as for classes and things, so we decided it would just be better to do it over a 2 week period and just, offer it during this time frame. So kind of how this will work. So I know we've got a few from California on as well, of just how, so that you guys know how it's going to work is for you guys in Utah, I'll explain both Utah and California. So this week and next week is the idea is everything that I would train is I would train to both California and to Utah. So that's why we're combining it and just knocking it out over this 2 week period. Then after that, we will do stuff that is specific for Utah here on Tuesdays and Thursdays for a few weeks. And then in California, they will knock out their contract stuff on Zoom over another week kind of a thing. So anyway, that's kind of what it looks like. So technically, there's not a starting place for the training, meaning you could drop in anywhere in the process of it. But if there were a starting spot, today's class would kind of be where I would say we kind of start everything. And it's because what we're going to talk about today is the company foundation. And so I'm going to talk about kind of the beginning of Century 21 Everest in particular, and not so much about Century 21, but Everest, our company, and give you some background, and then also just kind of what we think it takes to be successful. And so today's class kind of sets the stage then for everything else that we are going to teach and talk about, okay? So here's where I want to start with. So since we are still on Zoom and they can't see as well on the board, I'm going to write on my iPad here. And maybe, except for I'm not having my whiteboard, so I'm not sure what's going on here. There it is. Okay. So get that shared here so you guys can see that there. All right. I'm hoping this is the last time we do it this way. And that meaning that 6 weeks from now, I hope to be back in California training, but we'll see. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Is this going to be easier for you guys to see with the lights off?
Yes.
Better? Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about the company foundation. But before we do that, now, so since we're in this business of helping people buy and sell houses, if you were going to build a house, you would start with digging a hole in the ground, obviously, right? Or leveling it off, whatever. And then what is the next thing that they put in before they start to build?
Foundation.
So before the foundation even, the footings. So the first thing that they put in, so today's class is about the company foundation, but we got to put some footings in place first. Just like if we were building a house, you're going to start with the footings. That's what we're going to kind of start with today within what we're doing. So here's what I want to start with is think of it. Oops, let me get rid of that here. Think of it this way: this is the footings to the foundation we're going to talk about. Now, I am not that great of an artist, but hopefully I'm good enough that you can tell what this is. Any ideas what that is? Okay, good, close enough. A stool. Okay, so I was worried somebody's going to say a mushroom or from Star Wars, one of those AT things or whatever, or jellyfish. Yeah. I haven't heard jellyfish yet, but that's a new one. Okay. So think of it this way: this is the stool, but we're going to say it's your life. Okay. So a little bit of what we're going to talk about today is Everest as a company. To some extent, the owners of the company, John and George and Rob, that created Everest, and I'll tell you more of the background of that in just a minute. But to some extent, they look at this company as being more of a personal development company that happens to sell real estate. So that's why we start with talking about this. Think of this as being the stool of life. So this is your life, okay? And there are 3 legs to this stool. And so the first one is, and this is not in any particular order, but the first one is relationships, okay? So think of that leg as being relationships. The next one being your health. And then the last one we could say is business, or we could put / money, okay? So think of it that way is really what we are talking about. So everything that we're going to go through and talk about, and I'll point some of these things out to you as we go along, but everything that we're going to go through and talk about during this week and next week really applies to all 3 areas of your life. So think of it as we're a personal development company that happens to sell real estate. We want to make sure that you are being successful, not just in your business or the money side of things, but also in terms of your health and your relationships. And so you'll notice that a lot of the messages and things that we talk about really end up not necessarily having to be a ton about real estate. And the reason for that is because if you are successful in this area, the business or the money side of things, but unsuccessful in the other areas, from our standpoint, you're really not that successful. And so think about it this way. Everybody, I'm assuming, knows who Tiger Woods is. Anybody not know who Tiger Woods is? In fact, I haven't heard anything since his accident last week or 2 weeks ago. What does it? Anybody know? What?
Pretty sure he's retiring.
He's retiring?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he broke both his legs.
Yeah, that's the last I had heard, but then I haven't heard anything since then.
I'm pretty sure he came out with a statement stating that he probably retired because of it.
Wow.
It's gonna force him into retirement, unfortunately.
That's too bad. Okay, but let's back up from that, because go back to as a kid growing up, and a teenager or young adult, we looked at him as probably the greatest golfer to ever play the game, right? And probably to some extent still is. But what happened in his personal life?
Loved women too much.
Yeah, he loved women too much. So he got messed up in the relationship part of his life, which then led to issues within his relationship, which also then led to some other health issues, which then what happened to his golf game? It wasn't the same for a long, long time. Now, to some extent, he had kind of gotten it back again. But so that's kind of the point of what we're talking about with this is, notice he was killing it in terms of golf until his relationship got messed up. And notice how that then affected not only his business, but to some extent, even his health. He had issues with his knees and his back and those things. So notice how those things go together. And so for me, I mentioned, I have spent the last 15-ish years, almost 16, I guess now, training agents and helping them be successful in business. And I've watched people come in and make a ton of money in this business, but then they get messed up in either their health or their relationships part, and they end up in divorced and all these things. And I've seen that happen a lot, to where I go, that's not success in my book. So keep in mind, as we go through and talk about this, we want to talk about the whole in terms of this. Okay, so that's kind of the footings to the foundation that we're going to talk about today, is that it applies in those three different areas, not just in business. It also relates to, if you're successful, it also is going to happen in your relationships and your health. Okay, all right. Now with that, let's go to the next piece. So we're going to talk about 6 pieces of the company foundation. Now, as we get into those 6 pieces though, let me give you kind of the beginning of Century 21 Everest. And what happened was, there were 5 people sitting around a table. And it was George Morris, John Syatt, Rob Oakey, Gretchen Smoot, which you guys probably don't know and may not ever really get to know too much. And then a 5th person, that were sitting around a conference room table. And George Morris said to the other 4, now this was in 2009. What was going on with the real estate market in 2009?
It just tanked.
Yeah, it was still in the process of tanking, right?
Yeah.
And he said to the other 4, what do you guys think about us starting a real estate company? And John Syatt said, if anybody else told me that or asked me that, I would say they were crazy. But because it's you, I think we should do it. So the birth of this company happened, really, if you stop and think about it, in the Great Recession, when the real estate market, people were, prices were crashing. I remember actually even talking to a mentor of mine about some ideas and things that I had in terms of real estate, and went to him and said, what would you think about this in terms of starting a business? And he was like, I wouldn't do it right now. So like, to some extent, that's where Everest was born, was these 5 people sitting around the table. And what they decided though, is that if we're going to do it, we need to create this as a company to where it is more than just about real estate. Thus the footings of this, and we want to actually help people to become their very best. That's the objective of what Everest is about, is helping you to become your very best. So with that, there are 6 pieces to it. So we're going to run through these 6 things and talk about each of these 6 things and help you get started on it. Now, where these 6 things came from actually was, as an agent early on in his career, which I think George has been a licensed agent for 28-ish years, 28, 29 years. And what happened though, is he was going out and working a lot of for sale by owners and expired listings. And in the process of doing that, he was getting his butt kicked. He was finding that tons and tons of people he would get appointments, but then he would go on the appointment and not turn it into a listing. And so he was trying to figure out, what am I missing? What is it that other people have that I don't have? And he essentially then got a sticky note and started to write down ideas of things that he came up with. So what I'm going to share with you, these 6 things are somewhat organic, meaning it's not like he sat down and wrote out all 6 things at once, but over time he figured out top producing agents have these 6 pieces in place and dialed in and do them at an extraordinary level, which is why they are top agents. So I'm going to give those to you so that you can figure out what you need to do to improve upon and change those things in your own business as well. All right, so number 1, the first thing that he found out that top producing agents have is a purpose, or you could say a vision, or you could even call it their why. And actually, I'll add another one up there, and we'll just say even dreams, maybe. So you could think of it as any of those areas: is purpose, vision, why, and dreams. They know they have something they're striving for, I guess, to say it this way. is they have something they're striving for that is greater than who they are. And so what he found is these top producing agents understand what you'll probably hear it a lot of times of as their why or their purpose. Now, what I have found is that most people struggle with that in terms of like, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What was I created to do? Those type of things is a lot of times people will struggle with that. And so I want to talk with you a little bit about this purpose, the vision, and why, in helping you understand that piece of it. Because the people who are the most successful, not just in real estate, but in life in general as well, is all understand their purpose or their why. So I want to talk to you about that a little bit and give you some ideas of how to go through and figure out, because I'll tell you, even for me, early on in my training of this, I would kind of question of, do I really understand what my purpose is, what my vision is, what is it that I want to accomplish? And what I mean by that, is that it can't be about just money. If it's about money, then you're not going to get there. Meaning, if all we had to do is just say, I want to have 4 or 10 or $15 million, all I would have to do then is write that down somewhere, and that would drive me to go and make the money. But guess what? That doesn't work. So it's got to be something greater than that. Meaning, if you had the money, what would you be doing with your time? Where would you spend your time? Because that's whatever it is that you would be doing if you weren't having to worry about the income. That's going to give you a glimpse into what your purpose is or what your why is. Now, the example that I like to use recently is Tim Ballard. Do you guys know who Tim Ballard is? Anybody? You probably do. You just don't relating to it. So I'll help you then. So Tim Ballard is the guy who started Operation Underground Railroad. Does that help you any? So essentially, he was an FBI agent that part of his job was to go in and rescue people. And what he noticed was that there were kids that were being trafficked. So human trafficking. His job is to try to stop human trafficking. See, ultimately, it's not about the money for him. It's about going in and rescuing these little kids. That's the idea of he understands his purpose. And in fact, he came and spoke to our company one day, which is the first time I had ever actually heard him speak. But one of the things that I learned from that is he is I would say hugely successful because he's figured out that was what his purpose is to go and rescue and save these kids. And go ahead. Oh, that was an accident. Were you wanting to say something, Andrew?
Oh, no, I didn't even realize I was on speaker. I thought I was muted. I'm so sorry.
Oh, good. I just wasn't sure. All right. Yeah, if you guys want to, you're welcome to and chime in. So that's what I'm saying for you guys, is to figure out what is it that's going to drive you. Because if it is just about the money, it's not going to get you there. But you got to figure out something else that is going to drive you. Now, if you figure that out, that will then motivate you to do what you need to do. And what I mean by that is it is not logical for us to want to get on the phone and call strangers. That's just not logical. Meaning who we are as people is we've got a logic side of us, but then we've got this emotional side of us. And we are more of emotional creatures than we are logical. And logic does not tell you to go get on the phone and call strangers and ask them to buy or sell their home. And in fact, that's a lot of the fear of that we have to getting on the phone and making those type of calls, is because as a kid, your parents taught you stranger danger, to stay away from strangers and don't talk to strangers. Yet now you've come into a business where we're telling you, in order to be successful, you've got to go out and talk to strangers, and you have this resistance to it. And that's where the resistance comes from, is you were trained not to go talk to strangers. They're dangerous. They're going to hurt you. And so we now resist them. Well, in order to get past the emotion of that, you've got to have something that is driving you that is bigger than just the money. So how do you figure it out if you don't know? Because here's what I have found in my training of this is most people struggle with figuring that piece out is, okay, what is it?
So here's what I would recommend to do. If you have not done this, I would highly recommend that you get a journal or a piece of paper, and that what you do is write down at the top of it, what is my purpose? And then what you want to do is set aside an hour or 2 hours worth of time where what you're going to do is just write. So you're going to write down what is my purpose. And then after you've written down what is my purpose, you're going to write every single thought that comes to your head, no matter what it is. Any thought that pops into your head. If the thought pops into your head is, why did Russ ask me to do this? Then write down, why did Russ ask me to do this? If you have the thought pop into your head of, I'd rather be sitting on a beach than doing this, you write that down. Like the way to figure out what your purpose is you sit down and you just write. So write at the top of the paper, what is my purpose? Or what is my why? What's my vision? However you want to do it. But then you just start to write every single thought that comes to your head and just keep writing. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to write something down that then connects with you, that you're going to feel like this is it. And that's where you're going to then know, okay, that's what my purpose is. Now, for me, when I did this, the first time I did it, I sat down and I wrote for an hour. And literally for 1 hour, every single thought that popped into my head, I wrote it down. I wrote it down. I wrote it down. I wrote it down. And after an hour, I was like, I didn't get there. I don't have anything. So I had decided, this was on a Saturday. So I had decided the next Saturday, I was going to set aside another hour. And that next Saturday, I sat down and I just wrote on a piece of paper again, what is my purpose? And then I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote. And after an hour, I got done and I was like, I still don't feel like I've connected with anything. I don't know that I figured it out. So then I had this thought. I just popped into my head of go back and read everything you had written last week and everything you've written this week. So I went back and I pulled out the piece of paper and I read every single thing that I had written the week before. And I went through and read everything that I had written that day. And all of a sudden, the light clicked on for me and I noticed there was a common theme in the things that I was writing that just kept popping up over and over and over again. And in that moment is when I realized, okay, that's what it is. That's what the purpose is for me. So here's what I will tell you. The reason that I do what I'm doing today, why I'm doing the training, is because of that purpose. Is I just feel like part of what my responsibility is to help people learn and understand this business. And that's what I landed on. And so as a result of that, I actually put the actual I make less money doing what I do now than I made as a full-time real estate agent when I was helping people buy and sell. But I feel like I'm accomplishing what I'm supposed to do when I'm doing this. And so that's why I'm here teaching and training and doing this, is because of reading through all those things and coming across that and recognizing part of what I am supposed to do is help other people learn how to do this business. And that's why I'm here doing it. Rick?
Russ, I want to share real quick about the why. Sometimes it takes an individual asking you the profound question to get to the emotion. So I struggled with my why for quite some time. And then I had Russ ask me, like in a very demanding way, what is it about you that makes you care for the agent so deeply? And it revealed an emotional point inside of me that I literally burst into tears and still get emotional thinking about it. That's the why. Does it emotionally move you? I can't even talk about it because it's that deep. But sometimes it takes that emotion to understand you'll move heaven and earth to do what your why is. To ask somebody to review with you, somebody you trust, to really pull that emotional portion out of you, and great things come from it.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, good. So that's the first thing that George found out, is the number one thing that top producing agents understand is their why. They understand that it's something deeper than just about them. And here's what I will tell you, as I've worked with agents and helped with this, here's what I have found. Is almost always your why is going to involve other people. It's not about you, it's about helping other people. Like I said with Tim Ballard, of going and helping save these kids that are being human trafficked. It's always going to end up being about other people. And so that's part of what you want to do. So here's what you found. Top producing agents, the people who are the most successful, understand that, and they spend their time, everything that the money is about that they make in real estate is to allow them to go and do whatever that purpose, that vision, or that why is. Okay. All right. So if you don't understand that, that's your first assignment, is figure out what your why is. What is it that's going to drive you to go and do the things you need to do to become the type of person you need to become? All right. Number 2. Did you feel like I was staring you down there, Trevor?
Tired enough.
Okay. You were looking at me kind of like, why are you looking at me? I thought. Okay. Number 2 then. So the second thing that is part of this foundation, the next piece of this, which here's the difference again between Everest and other real estate companies. And I've been with a couple of other different real estate companies before being at Everest, is typically most companies don't spend time talking about your purpose, your vision, your why, and helping you understand that. Like I said, we look at ourselves as being more of a personal development company, because if you become who you need to become, you'll accomplish the things you want to accomplish. Most real estate companies start with this. And that's number 2 on ours, is goals / plans, or plan and schedule. So that's the next thing we're going to talk about. Is number 2 is goals, plan, and schedule. All right. In terms of goals, plan, and schedule, what typically, well, actually, let me ask you this. What do you think the number 1 goal in terms of income, if we were to do a survey of real estate agents across the whole country, what do you think the most common number is that people would have as a goal of how much money they want to make in real estate?
Million. Not enough.
$1 million? Okay, good. I don't know if I've heard people say million.
I'm gonna say
100,000.
yeah, people just shoot for 6 figures.
Yeah, so per year.
100,000.
And I probably should have specified that per year. The goal that I hear most often when I say, what's your goal in terms, and in fact, usually I'll start the class, I should have today, I just realized I didn't. Usually I'll start the class by asking each person, what's your goal in terms of income a 1 year from real estate? And the most common number that comes up is $100,000. Now, here's the thing. Any idea, so I'll just to keep you guys involved, any idea what the average income of real estate agents is across the country if we were to average it out?
$10,000. I don't know. 56,000.
Yeah, it is typically somewhere around the $50,000. But
active.
What's that?
All active.
Yeah, if you take the active ones, it's going to be 50. So what you're saying, Trevor, is actually correct as well. Meaning, if you took everybody who considered themselves or who is licensed as an agent and divided it into that number, it's going to be more like $10,000 is probably what it's going to be. But if you take the ones who really say, yes, no, this is my full-time job, I don't have another job, it's probably somewhere in the 50,000 range-ish thing. But yet, almost everybody's goal is to make $100,000 in this business. So why do they not do it? Well, there's a couple of reasons. And so we're going to talk tomorrow about business planning. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the goals section right now, because we're going to tomorrow spend the whole time talking about that. And I'm going to give you some ideas that are going to help you in figuring out how to actually go and achieve those goals that you want to do. So instead, what I want to talk for just a minute about, though, is plan and schedule. Because once we set our goals, the next thing we got to do is have a plan to get there, and then a schedule that's going to allow us to get there as well. And so actually, I'm going to save that till tomorrow too. So tomorrow we'll hit on, tomorrow's whole class is going to be all about just this. Okay. So I'm actually just going to end this part of it right there, because we're going to spend the whole time tomorrow. Okay. So just know though, that to some extent, actually, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. I don't usually do this, but I'm going to do it. So I'm going to teach part of tomorrow today. Okay. So just as part of a homework assignment, because part of what I want you guys to do is to come up with what are your goals? What is going to be your goal in terms of income that you want to make from real estate? And the reason I'm going to give it to you as a homework assignment is I think it'll help you figuring it out for tomorrow. So I'm going to give you a little bit of what we're going to do tomorrow, but not a lot. So for tomorrow, here's what I want you to come with. I want you to come to class tomorrow with how much money do you need on and you can do it monthly or annual, however you want to, but how much money do you need on a monthly basis? Yeah, let's do it monthly. How much do you need monthly just to survive? So if you don't know that, then tonight, what you need to do, or sometime today for tomorrow is, and you're not going to have to share it with anybody, but yourself, but I want you to come tomorrow with a, here is my goal, or excuse me, not goal. Here's how much money I need to pay for food, to pay for a car payment, to pay a rent or a house payment, for just kind of like on a monthly basis, what is the very bare minimum that you have to have, okay? And then we're going to build on that tomorrow. See, the problem is the way that most people end up setting their goals is they just go grab a number. They just go, well, I've never made 100,000, so I want to make 100,000. Or if they've made 100,000, then they might go, well, I want to make 200,000 or 250,000. Like we kind of just have these thresholds or ceilings that we put on ourselves that we kind of go, okay, now that I've broken through that one, then now I'm going to go for 250. And then after that, it's 500 or whatever. But I'm going to show you tomorrow how and why that doesn't work. And we'll get into that tomorrow on that piece. So come tomorrow knowing what's your monthly amount that you need just to survive, to pay for food, to pay for, shelter, car, all that kind of stuff. All right. Next, number 3. The third piece. So now again, remember what we're talking about is what are these key pieces that George found that the top producing agents had in order. And when I say in order, not like 1, 2, 3, but they had these things worked out. And so the first was that they understood their purpose and why. Second was they had goals, plans, and a schedule that they followed. And then number 3 was mindset. And what he found is their mindset was different than most people. Now, I'm going to tell you guys a story real quick about a guy by the name of Adolf Merkel. Does anybody know who Adolf Merkel is? Everybody ever heard of him? My assumption was going to be no, but I just never know. And if somebody does, then I will say, well, tell me what you know about it. But Adolf Merkel was, he owned a pharmaceutical company in Germany. And this company that he owned, actually his grandfather is the one who started this pharmaceutical company. And then his dad took over the company, and then Adolf Merkel took it over from his dad. And at the end of 2008, now we already talked about what happened in 2009. At the end of 2008, his net worth, Adolf Merkel's net worth, now I just went blank on it, so I have to look it up here. I have it in my notes. Where's it at? Because I just went blank on it. There it is, okay. $12.8 billion. Okay, so he's worth $12.8 billion. Now we know what happens 2008, 2009, the market starts to crash. Well, he, similar, actually, this is interesting. I didn't think of this. Similar to what happened to GameStop stock recently.
It blew up for about a day
But why?
because Reddit's insane.
Okay, but
People decided that they could, I guess, take power into their own hands, kind of thing.
okay, but and back up even further than that. Why did they decide to do that?
They were short selling it. So the people went around and made it go up. So
Okay, good. So you had these hedge funds that said, so which similar to what the hedge funds did, Adolf Merkel did. Okay, and I never really thought of that till just like the connection of this till now. But these hedge funds looked at GameStop and said, they're going to go the way of Blockbuster. They're going to be gone. And so let's start shorting their stock. So for you guys that maybe don't understand that, essentially, if you buy a stock, they call that you're long on the stock. So meaning you're buying, hoping that the price will go up. To go short on a stock is you assume that the price of the stock is going to go down. And so think of it this way. Essentially, to short a stock, it's almost like what I'm doing is I'm selling a stock that I don't own. Okay, so it's like if I just went to Trevor and said, okay, Trevor, I want to sell you some shares of GameStop. And he says, okay, I'll buy them from you, but I actually don't even own any shares. So I'm selling him shares that I don't own. My plan being that the stock will go down in price. And when it goes down in price, then I'll go over to Christian here and say, hey, will you sell me your shares of GameStop? And he'll say, yes. I buy them, and then I turn around, and now I've made it whole. Okay, so just kind of think of it as that's essentially what's happening. Well, Adolf Merkel did that with Volkswagen. So remember, he's in Germany. He owns a German pharmaceutical company. He sees Volkswagen is struggling. He decides he is going to dump a ton of money into shorting, which you're not actually dumping a ton of money, but for the sake of making it easy, he dumps a ton of money into shorting the stock. Well, what he didn't know is Porsche was going to come in and save them. And so they infused a bunch of money into Volkswagen, which all of a sudden their stock goes, just like what GameStop did, from going down to all of a sudden shooting up. And as a result of that, he had to do what all of these hedge funds had to do, which was now all of a sudden I had to go to Christian and buy stock for a lot more than what I sold it to Trevor for, which means now I lost money. Well, that's what happened to Adolf Merkel, is he had to now cover the shorts that he had done, which he lost a bunch of money. So at the end of that year, his income or his net worth went down $3.6 billion. So he had made, so now that's not just from this one trade, but that's just overall because of his business taking a hit, plus the money he lost in the short sale of Volkswagen stock. He went from having $12.8 billion in net worth, reduced that by 3 point, whatever it was that I said, 3.6 billion. So now keep in mind, he's still got $9 billion. Like you probably are going to still be okay. I mean, at least, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe you guys would struggle if you only had 9 billion, but I would still be okay. Well, guess what? He tied his self-worth to his money. So at the end of 2008, what ended up happening is he steps in front of a train. He commits suicide because he felt like a failure, because he had lost $3.8 billion. Keeping in mind, he still had over $9 billion. Now, so here's the point. Mindset is a skill set. And so if you tie this back to your purpose, you can't get caught up in it being about the money, because for him, he was focused on the wrong things. He was focused on the money, not about who he was as a person. So as a result of all of a sudden now taking this huge hit in his income, which again, I'm sure if any of us was in that $12.8 billion and we lost $3 billion, we would still you'd be pretty upset. But keep in mind, you still had $9 billion, so you're probably going to be okay. But because of that, he ended up taking his own life. See, this is where I come back to of saying, it has to be something greater or bigger than just about the money, because if it is, then you'll struggle, okay? Now, so in terms of mindset, what is it that we do? Well, now, you will see, if you haven't noticed already, but that we as a company send out a text message every morning at 7 a.m. So whether you're in California or Utah, you get a text that starts going out around 7. You probably get it somewhere between 7 a.m. and 7:05 typically. But the idea behind that is, and you'll notice that most of the time, those messages are all about mindset. Well, the reason that they're about mindset is because what we know is that this can be a very negative business that you get told no a lot. You get hung up on. You get people that are going to yell at you and those things. So the idea of that is to try to get some positive infused in it. So you'll notice that at 7 a.m. every morning, you're going to get a text message that is designed around helping to have you see, okay, I can do more, I can be more, I can become more, all of those things. So a few questions for you that I want you guys to consider here. So in fact, I'll write them down here as, A, B, and C's things. So A, in terms of mindset, what are you listening to? Are you listening to things that are motivating and lifting you up? In fact, Zig Ziglar said that your car should be like a mini university. Meaning, when you're driving around in the car, are you listening to NPR? Are you listening to whatever politics or the news, those type of things? Those are all negative. And in fact, it's interesting. I was watching, well, let's see, how much detail do I want to give you on this? I have a friend who started a new business, and he was telling me about this business and how well he's doing on it. Well, so I wanted to go research this business a little bit, and I watched a video of somebody else talking about this same type of a business, and they totally were just trashing on how horrible it was, and you can't make any money, and blah, 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 blah. Well, my friend was telling me after a year of doing this business, he had made over $800,000 in this business. And it was interesting because I was like, all of this stuff online was just negative about it. And I was like, isn't that fascinating that you're going to be able to find, to some extent, whatever you want to find or whatever you look for. So just like, what are you listening to? Are you listening to things that are going to lift you up and build you? Or are you listening to things that are going to tear you down? And so again, think of your car as being this mini university, and are you using it as a way to improve who you are and what you're doing? And then Jeanette's going to take over for the next part of the class. Come on up, Jeanette. Oh, you were trying to sneak in without getting noticed. I'm sorry. All right. So what are you listening to next? Then? What are you watching? Meaning, are you using television or YouTube and those things? Can you help them?
Well, I wanted to sort these, and I didn't want to disrupt you, but
It's too late, so just do it.
it's gonna be too messy in my office, so I'll sleep.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't want you to make it messy in here, though.
I'm not gonna do it till you're done.
Even after I'm done.
No, then I'll clean up.
Oh, okay.
There's
all right.
not room in my office to do. That is so cool that you're doing that.
That's it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I like it.
Thanks for coming. All right. What?
I said, glad to have you.
I know. All right. So what are you watching? Same kind of a thing. Are you getting on YouTube and just watching stuff that will help you learn and grow? Or are you watching stuff that's just mindless? Those type of things. And then C, what are you reading? Now you will see tomorrow when we go through the business plan, because we're going to talk about business planning tomorrow. So we're going to get into goals and things. Part of our business plan has on there, what books are you going to read? And so I will give you some ideas of books and things that I would recommend that you should read if you have not, as we go through and we talk about, not just tomorrow, but we're going to talk about it just throughout this week and as we do the classes and things, okay? So what are you reading? Then next, who are you associating with? Who do you associate with? And are they people that are bringing you up, or are they negative and bringing you down? Now, Darren Hardy, who was the editor of Success Magazine, and now somewhat of a motivational speaker, I guess. But one of the things that he said, and I think he may have gotten it from somebody else, but I remember it from him. So I always attribute it to him, even though you may tell me Zig Ziglar or somebody else said it. But one of the things that he said is your income is the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. So if you want to change your income, change who you hang out with. By hanging out with people who are making more money with you, more money than you will start to make more money because they will get you to start thinking different. And so part of what we want you thinking about in terms of what you are doing is pay attention to who you're associating with. And how Darren Hardy said it is, look at each person that you associate with and then make a decision. Should I spend more time with this person? Am I spending the right amount of time with this person, or should I spend less time with this person? And then decide if it's somebody you should spend less time with, meaning you may have family members that you can't not associate with them, but if they bring you down, limit the amount of time you spend with them. And so take a look at all the people that you're hanging out with, because they are controlling the mindset and the way that you think. And if you notice, you will start to talk and act the way that they act, which is why for parents that it's so crucial with their kids to make sure that they have good friends because they will start to act like the people that they hang out with, okay? And then the final thing here is participate. So in terms of mindset, the company Everest, as I mentioned to you, we look at it as we are more of a personal development company that happens to sell real estate. So part of what we are trying to do is if you will participate and stay engaged in the things that we are doing, meaning we offer morning ascent every morning at 8 a.m. in Utah. For California, it's at 7 a.m. right now while we're doing it on Zoom. Eventually, we'll get back to where it's just done in each of the offices individually at 8 o'clock, but participate in that. And here's what happens though, is people will stop participating. And usually what they'll say is this: oh, well, I've heard all the stories. I've heard it before. I've heard John and George tell that before. But here's what I would say is those same people are typically the ones who then, once they will participate, they'll get involved and they'll get their business up and running. And then they watch them quit participating and then the business starts to go away and they can't figure out why that's happened. See, it's been said you never cross the same river twice. The idea is that you may have heard the story before, but hopefully you have grown to where you're going to learn something new from, okay? So make sure you're participating. So in terms of mindset, those are the 5 things that we recommend, is to make sure you're listening to things, you're watching things, you're reading, pay attention to who you're associated with, and just continue to participate in what we do, in the summits that we do. Even if you don't participate every single day in Morning Ascent, have 1 or 2 or 3 days a week that you say, I'm going to participate on all of those. I noticed we've got Armani on here with us. Are you on and listening, Armani?
Yes, I am.
Right on.
Good morning, Russ.
Here's why I say that. Next Wednesday, Armani's going to be doing Morning Ascent, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and he's got some awesome stuff he's going to throw down for you. So even if nothing else, make sure you watch Morning Ascent next Wednesday, right?
Yes, for sure. Thank
All
you.
right. All right, cool. Next, so 3 was mindset. So now let's go to number 4. Number 4 is discipline / accountability. What is the difference between discipline and accountability?
Discipline is like by yourself, accountability to others.
Perfect. Yeah. Here's how I say it: is discipline is internal, accountability is external. So when you stop and think about it, is part of what George found, again, what we're talking about is these 6 pieces that are crucial to your success. What he found is the top producing agents are either highly disciplined, meaning if they said, I'm going to prospect, they did it. If they said they were going to do something, you could count on them to do it. Or if they didn't have that amount of discipline, they would set up some type of an accountability program in place, and they would get something set up to be held accountable. Now, for you, that's what I would ask you, is you need to figure out how disciplined are you? And if you can have the self-discipline, meaning if you can, we're going to talk tomorrow about a schedule and what the ideal schedule looks like. If you can put together that schedule and then stick to it, great. But if not, then you need to get somebody to hold you accountable to that schedule so that you will stick to following the schedule. See, a lot of times you will have people, and I know for me, early on, as I, how would I word it? Aged, got a little older, whatever. Probably this is the better way of saying it. When I got to the point where I couldn't just eat whatever I wanted and it would melt away just by doing nothing. When I got to the point, hey, I actually have to exercise now. For me, when I got to that point, it was not an easy thing. Like, I don't enjoy exercising. I don't want to get up and go and exercise. So early on, when I decided, okay, I need to do that, I didn't have the self-discipline. I do now. Today, I can get up and get myself to do it. But early on, I did not have the discipline to do it. I would wake up in the morning and go, I don't feel like it. And then I would not get up. So what I did is I found a friend that we just said, okay, we're going to meet at the gym every day at this particular time. And we would hold each other accountable. It got me to get out of bed and go do it because I knew he was going to be sitting there waiting. And if I didn't show up, I would hear about it. And the same thing with him. If he didn't show up, he knew he was going to hear from me about it because, hey, I got up. I did not want to be up either. So if you have the discipline to do it on your own, great. But if you don't, get some accountability. Get somebody that can be an accountability partner that you could say, okay, let's do this. Now, the next level of that is even writing out a contract with each other. So let's say that I wanted to commit to prospecting every day. And I said to Trevor, okay, I will be here. Well, you guys are kind of doing this, aren't you? So tell us what you're doing.
So, okay, so we have an accountability contract since morning ascents have been over June. We've been doing our own, so we can do it in person. So we've been meeting at 8:30 every morning, doing our own morning ascent, and then starting our calls. And so if you don't like show up or you're late, like it's like an accountability like for money. It's like if everybody else is there, like you're not, $100 in there, you don't get it back. So
Yeah,
you
good.
lose money if you don't show up, basically.
Perfect. So yeah, so if in the event that so figure out what that's going to look like. Now, let me give you a quick example of that. So part of what I'm responsible for, which I'm just remembering now that somebody owes me some money. So one of the things that I'm responsible for within the company is putting together the daily message. So either George, John, Jeremy, or other people within the leadership team will record the daily message. They'll, do an audio recording. They send it to me. When I get it, then I'll go and put the intro music to it. I'll have the message, and then I put the outro music and schedule it to go out every day. So that's part of my responsibility within the company. Well, occasionally what will happen is I don't have any messages, and I have a group text that I send out that I'll say, hey, I need some messages and I don't have any. And usually what will end up happening is I will ask for some accountability within the group of John, George, Jeremy, of, hey, I need some messages. What are you guys going to put up as an accountability? And Jeremy is known for saying, I'll give you $150 if I don't have you a message by the end of the day today. And to this point, he has never not gotten me a message. I have had one time that George said, I'll give you $100 if I don't get it to you. And he didn't get it to me. And the next day, the next day I got the $100. And then I won't tell you who it is. What somebody else in that arena said, because this happened just a couple of weeks ago. Jeremy had said, I will give every person on this text thread $100 if I don't get Russ 3 messages by the end of the day. And he had gotten me, and then he did. Somebody else on the thread said, yeah, I'll do that too, but I'm only going to give $50. Now, here's the point of why I say that. When the text came in and said, I'm only going to do $50, I knew right then they weren't going to get me a message, because in their mind, well, I'll try to, but because what they said was, well, I'm not going to put up $100 on it. Well, if you intend to do it, you could put up $1 million on it, because you would say, well, I'm going to do it, like no matter what. But when they said I'm going to do 50, which I'm going to, as soon as this class is over, go remind them, it'll be $50. But as soon as they said 50, I was like, I'm not going to get a message. And so then the next day I was like, all right, well, should we all send you our, because they said they would do it for every person on the text thread. I said, should we all send you our Venmo? And somebody came on and said, I think we ought to give this person until the end of today. And I said, okay. And I just realized now that then I totally forgot, and I still have not gotten the message. So I'm going to have to say today is $50 per. So here's the point though. You can't do like, I can't do this. So Christian, I will make calls tomorrow, or I'll give you $1. Like that doesn't hurt. If I'll wake up in the morning and go, I don't feel like doing my calls. Here's $1. Leave me alone. But if I said, I will give you $10,000 if I don't make my calls tomorrow, Christian's over in my house, flattening my tires, trying to stop me, right? But the point being, like, make the accountability high enough to where it's like, no, I would rather go and do that. Okay.
So you'll actually build a lot.
Yeah, to where you're going to say, no, I'm going to actually do this. So that's the idea between discipline and accountability. The reason accountability is so crucial is if you don't have the self-discipline to get yourself to do it, then you've got to make sure that you are saying, okay, I am going to do this, or I'll have somebody that I'm going to do an accountability with that if I don't show up, I owe you $5,000. I mean, whatever that number is, but something that is going to have you say, okay, I'll do it. Okay. All right. So that's discipline and accountability. Next, number 5, which I just realized. You and Trip. Here. All right. Number 5. Number 5 on this. Now, again, just as a reminder, we're talking about the 6 key pieces that George found that top producing agents all have. And that the last one is either high discipline or accountability. Is they would, if they can't get themselves to do it on their own, they found an accountability partner, somebody to hold them accountable. Number 5 then is skill sets. Now there are 12 skills that you need to be working on and master. Okay, so I'm going to give you, and we'll talk about, to some extent, we're going to talk briefly about all 12 of them right now, but ultimately we're going to spend the rest of this week and next week. So, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week, talking about these skills. So that's the idea of most of what we're going to hit on. But I want to at least go through and talk about and hit on, at least at a high level area, these skill sets. So there's 12 skill sets that you need to really be working on, okay? So the first one is setting appointments. So here's what I want you guys, oops, talking and not spelling. Here's what I want you guys to do is I want you to be thinking about, as we go through and we talk about these skill sets, I want you to some extent, I would say off to the side of each of these that you write, as you write them down, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 of how good you are at this particular skill set, each of the skill sets as we go through. The idea of why I want you to do that is because then at the end of this, you're going to know, okay, I need to work on these particular skills. I need to get better, okay? So on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say that you are in terms of your skill set? How good are you at setting appointments on a scale of 1 to 10, okay? Now, for me, and I will, I think on Wednesday, I'm going to tell you guys a story about how I learned the lesson of how important setting appointments are. So I'm going to run you through what that did and how it changed. It totally changed. In fact, I will tell you, I would not be here training you guys today if I did not have that experience that taught me about setting appointments, because I would not have survived in the business. I would have not made enough money to survive. Yet once I understood this key piece on setting appointments and implemented it, I went from the point of I was about ready to have to go get another job to then I became the top agent in my office, all from this one thing on setting appointments. And so I'll run you through and tell you about that scenario on Wednesday. We'll get into that. But how good are you at setting appointments? Essentially, here's what I will tell you. Your job in real estate, at least for me, I know when I went and got my license, the whole thing that brought me into real estate was I just saw how much money some people were making, and I was like, well, I'm going to go do that. I thought that really all you did as an agent was that, in fact, so I was 25 when I got my real estate license. And I thought that it was just about, that people showed up to the office. I didn't know how, but I just thought, people just walked in. Hey, I want to buy a house. Oh, okay, well, let's go help you. Or that people would come in the office. Hey, I need to sell my house. Oh, great. Let me go do that for you. I didn't realize that really when you get your real estate license, you are becoming either a telemarketer or a door-to-door salesperson. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't really understand how all that worked. And so I just assumed you showed up, that the office provided people for you to go and work. I didn't realize you had to go do it on your own. And essentially, your job really becomes setting appointments. Ultimately, at the end of the day, your job is to set an appointment every day. And we'll talk more about that on Wednesday. But your job is to set appointments, okay? So how good are you at doing it? And maybe you're so new you don't know yet, but that's okay. Just know that's one of the skills we're going to work on this week. And in fact, most of what we're going to talk about on Wednesday is all about setting appointments. You were hoping to be in here, huh? Oh, hang on. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to. I just remembered while I was telling these guys about discipline. Are you? Okay.
How
Sorry.
often is he in this office?
Jeremy?
Yeah.
I don't know. Time to
Like,
time.
like hardly ever. Today's the first day of the.
Oh, was?
I met him on the elevator.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we usually do a coaching call at 11 on Mondays, and I'm usually kind of the background running it, and he was doing it today. He was hoping to come in here, but we messed him up. So, all right, so setting appointments. How good are you at setting appointments? You guys didn't hear who I said, oh, $50, did
It's a girl.
you? I know, I realized right as I said it, I was like, oops. All right, next then. So setting appointments. Now, here's the thing. When you get on and go on the phone, or you go knock on somebody's door, or just whatever type of prospecting you do, you are not going to set an appointment every time. It's not going to happen. Even though that's your goal, your objective is to set an appointment every time. It's not going to happen. So as a result of that, you're going to end up with some leads. Now, so the second skill that honestly, this is the one that I think handicaps agents more than anything, is this skill, and that is lead follow-up. Because you're not always going to set an appointment with every single person you talk to on the phone. You're going to come across people who are going to say, yeah, we've thought about selling our home, but we want to wait till, we've got our youngest is going to graduate from high school in June. So we're not going to sell till June. Well, that's going to be somebody that you probably would want to follow up with, wouldn't you? I mean, let me ask you this. If you plan on being in real estate a year, well, let me ask it that way. Who plans on still being in real estate a year from now? Okay. So if you came across somebody who said, we're going to sell, but not for a year, do you just go, well, heck with it? No, instead, you should have a process set up of how you're going to do that. Now, we'll talk more about that as well throughout this week and next week as we go through. But you need to get good at lead follow-up. And in fact, I would say probably 75 or 80% of your business is going to come as a result of lead follow-up. Meaning, there is a real estate trainer out there right now that what that says is this. He will say, this is how he trains it. If they're not going to buy or sell in the next 7 days, move on. Now, I would agree with that. If you are making $500,000 a year in this business, that probably works. But if you're doing less than 10 transactions a year, you should keep a lead for at least a year. Like if you come across somebody that says they're going to do something, I would stay in touch with that person for at least a year before I said, okay, they're no good. Now, obviously, if along the way they told you, don't ever call me again, that's different. But just know, if you're doing less than 10 transactions a year, you should do lead follow-up for somebody for up to a year. If you're doing between 11 and 20 transactions a year, you should probably stay in touch with people for at least 6 months before you would just say, yeah, they're not, I'm not wasting my time. If you're doing 21 to 50 transactions a year, I think 3 months. If you're doing over 50 transactions a year, then that's where I would say, okay, maybe you start to say, okay, now, if in a month they're not going to do something, I'm moving on. But so think of it that way. The less amount of business you're doing, the longer you should be willing to stay in touch with a lead. Now, here's what I find. Agents will come across a lead and then never follow up with them. They'll come across somebody that says, yeah, we're going to sell in June. Like the example I used with you. We're going to sell our house in June. And the agent goes, okay, great. Well, can I stay in touch with you? Yep, that'll be just fine. And then they'll put it somewhere, write it on a sticky note or whatever. And then they never follow up with them. Or they even put it into a database system that reminds them. And they'll go, oh, yeah, I'll call them later. And then they call them in June. And guess what happens? They had already sold their house. So how good are you at lead follow? If it is not one of your strengths, then we'll talk about a system that you can use as part of what we're going to do. It'll probably be like next week, but we'll talk about a system you can use that will help you in this process. but how good are you at lead follow-up? Because if you're not good at lead follow-up, you need to get good at lead follow-up. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rank yourself on lead follow-up? If you haven't done it, rank yourself, okay? All right, next. And these aren't necessarily in an order per se that I'm giving them to you, but it's just kind of going to be how I'm thinking about them. But next one I'm going to do is pre-qualify. How good are you at pre-qualifying? Now, let me explain pre-qualifying, because sometimes people misunderstand this. When I say pre-qualifying, I don't mean like, can they qualify for a loan? Although that's included in pre-qualifying. But pre-qualifying is about you asking additional questions to find their motivation. So think of it this way. When I'm prospecting, my purpose of prospecting is what? To set an appointment. Okay, so it's to set that appointment. I already mentioned to you that you're not going to set an appointment every time that you call. You're going to come across leads. So you're going to have to do lead follow-up. But eventually, in fact, actually, let me even say this to make sure you guys get it. What is the purpose of lead follow-up?
Just like recall somebody to list their house.
To set an appointment. Then once I've set the appointment, Trevor, now that I've set the appointment, the next thing that I want to do is pre-qualify.
I like to do both those at the same time.
To lead follow-up and pre-qualify?
No, setting appointments and pre-qual.
Oh, well, so yeah, good. Now, here's the thing. So depending on, if I set the appointment to happen within the next day or two, then I would agree. I want to pre-qualify right then. But if for some reason I set an appointment and it's going to happen after about 72 hours, I'm not going to pre-qualify right then. Because I want to make sure I have a reason to call them back again. Versus if I'm going to be going out to meet with the person the next day, I want to pre-qualify while I'm on the phone with them. I want to ask these additional questions. So now what's the purpose of this pre-qualify then? Because remember I said it's not necessarily what do they qualify for? How much do they qualify for? What's the purpose of pre-qualifying? Trevor?
You're basically making sure that they will sign with you and like list their house. Like you get them to the step and basically get them to say yes to working with you. That way when you're there, you don't have to sell yourself. You can just show them the information and get the paperwork signed.
Okay, good. That's part of it for sure. So here's what I would say is ultimately, were you going to say something, Jeff?
Make sure there's actually a need. I mean,
Yeah.
You don't even set up an appointment and then you come over. They're not looking to really buy or sell. They're just looking for information.
Perfect. Yeah, good. So ultimately, think of it as pre-qualifying is to figure out the motivation. It's to find out what is the motivation. Is there the need, what the Chad just said, is there the need for them to either buy or sell? And then can they do it? Does it make sense for them to be able to do it? So for example, let's say that it is a buyer that I've got on the phone that I've called and they say something about, yeah, well, I want to buy a house and blah, blah, blah. One of the questions I may want to ask as part of pre-qualifying is, hey, so what do you do for work? Oh, well, I don't have a job. See, now, all of a sudden, there might be motivation to buy, but do they have the ability? So again, I'll talk more on this, the pre-qualifying and things later on, but how good are you at doing that? And what I mean by that is I watch a lot of agents get on the phone, set an appointment, then they don't ask any additional questions. And then what Chad said is they get out to the house and the seller then tells them, oh yeah, we were wanting to get our tax evaluation just to fight our taxes. So we want to know how much our house is worth or whatever. So, which is fine. Now, and here's the other thing I would say. So keep in mind this, when we pre-qualify, we are not trying to disqualify, because I watch agents do that too, is they'll set an appointment and then they try to figure out a way not to go on the appointment. That's not the point either. It's not to disqualify people. It's not to figure out a way not to go on the appointment. It's just to figure out, is there the motivation and do they have the ability? So for me, it's about motivation and ability. Pre-qualifying is figuring out motivation and their ability to do it. So with a buyer, I'm going to ask, hey, so what do you do for work? Because I want to know they have a job. Hey, when's the last time you checked your credit? So I want to find out those type of things. On a seller, what is causing you to decide to sell your home? Well, I got a job transfer. Well, there's high motivation there. If it's, oh, we just thought, because of where home prices are, that if we could sell it, then we would sell it. Well, then what are you going to do? I don't know, we'll figure it out if we sell. Like that's probably not as much motivation there. So now, here's the other thing I want to say though. If you are, again, doing less than 10 transactions a year, if you set an appointment, ask the pre-qualifying questions, and there's not a lot of motivation, still go on the appointment. If you're doing less than 10 transactions a year, you should still go on the appointment. Why?
Experience.
That's right. I want you to go out and get the practice of going and meeting with somebody and being in front of them and going through a listing presentation or whatever to get the experience of doing it. And here's the other thing that I have found is the more seasoned you are as an agent, the more of you'll develop the sixth sense of knowing when you should or shouldn't go that you don't have early on. And there are times where you will go and on an appointment that you feel like there wasn't motivation, but then you get out to the house and what happens is all of a sudden they tell you, well, yeah, no, we really do need to sell. It's or whatever. But that's why I say still go, because I've watched new agents not go on an appointment and then somebody else goes out and gets that listing. And it's like, you should have still gone on it. So for me, until you develop that, you should go do it. Okay. All right. Next. Presenting. So now that we've set the appointments or we've lead follow up till we got an appointment, we've pre-qualified. Now we're going to go out and present to them. Now, how good are you at presenting? Now I'm going to go through and give you, and we're going to talk about a buyer presentation and a listing presentation. So I'm going to give you both of those and train you on how to do that as part of what we're doing this week and next week. So we're going to cover all of those things, but how good are you at it right now? If you got an opportunity to go sit down with a buyer or seller right now, how good do you think you would do? Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. What would you say? Or actually, I probably should have said it this way, and it's probably too late now. But usually I say rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 5, 1 to 3, whatever you want to do. If you're worried about your neighbor seeing what you're rating yourself, you could have it be whatever scale you want it to be. Then that way, if you put 5, they might be like, oh, you think you're bad, but whatever. Anyway, if you're worried about it, do that. Okay. All right. So presenting, how good are you at presenting? We're going to spend actually a few days on just the presenting piece, both to a buyer and to a seller. So just know I'm going to help you with that throughout this week. But how good are you at presenting? All right, next is let's do pricing. Now, to some extent, this one probably doesn't matter as much in today's market, the pricing part of things, because almost you can throw it out there and it's going to sell. I mean, that's not totally true, by the way. In fact, I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that happening, where a seller is thinking they could just get this astronomical number that the market's not there yet, and they're going to start listing properties that way. And I believe we're starting to see a little bit of that already anyway. So just kind of know that part of what you need to do is get good at pricing. Well, how do you do that? The way you get good at pricing is by doing it. You just have to do it. And so my recommendation is you should be doing some type of a CMA on a property, pricing property, at least once a week. At least once a week, you should find a property and just go grab one off the MLS. It doesn't matter. Or grab one in your neighborhood, whatever. But run some comparables on it to say, here's what I think this home is worth. And then keep the address, and then every week go and check and see, as you're doing those, did they sell? And what you thought it was going to sell for, did it sell for that? Now, typically, I'm saying it as, it's listed here and you're going to say, I think it's worth this. And you're seeing if it comes down to that. To some extent, maybe you're even doing the opposite now, where you're going, okay, it's listed at this. I'll bet it's going to sell up here at this price or whatever. But kind of to some extent, the way you're going to get good at pricing property is by doing it. And then you'll see, and what you'll notice is you start getting pretty good at it to where you'll trust yourself that when you go out and meet with the seller, you can say, this is what I think your home is worth, and you'll be pretty close to being accurate. Okay. All right. So pricing. Then next, let's do future pacing. What is future pacing?
I don't know, if, like setting up a specific time period in which you want to like get things done or like have objectives with that person. Like, hit it, and they have goals that are gonna get done.
Okay, good. Yeah, so here's how I think about it. Future pacing for me is going to be telling a buyer or a seller what to expect. So let me give you an example that I like to use is with a seller. When I list their home, I want to tell them what to expect in terms of when an offer comes in. And so for me, on a seller, I'm going to say, all right, here's what you want to expect is they're probably going to offer this amount of money. They're probably going to come in and ask for you to pay for a home warranty. They're going to want to do an inspection. And then I'll tell the seller, here's what to expect on an inspection is they're going to come back and they're going to ask you to fix stuff that you think your house is like perfect, but a home inspector is going to come through and find stuff that they're going to make it look like your house is going to fall down. And so be prepared. And here's how I usually will future pace the seller. Be prepared that and this is true what I'm about to say to you. And this is what I tell the seller. After a buyer has done their inspection, the most number of items I've seen a buyer come and ask the seller to fix was 72. So as long as we get less than 72 items that they ask us to fix, I'm happy. If they ask us to fix more than 72, and then the seller's usually going to go, 72? Like, really? And I just, well, here's what happens is the inspector comes out, he does the inspection on the home, and then afterwards he has a list, which basically is saying, here's the kind of stuff you should watch out for in the home. The buyer's going to come back and want you to fix all those things, even though we probably don't need to fix all those things. But don't be surprised if they ask for 72 items. Now, the reason I do that, because I truly did, one of the very first listings I ever had in my career, the buyer came back and gave us a list of 72 items they wanted fixed. Now, what my seller did though was went back and said, no, we're not doing all that. We'll do these 5. And they were probably the 5 that the buyer wanted done anyway. But I've used that now with the seller. That way, the reason if I do it that way, they're now nervous, which I don't necessarily want them to be nervous, but they're a little nervous when, hey, we're getting the list of inspection items and they're going, well, how many items are on there? And when I say, oh, there's 5, they're like, oh, good. Like it's almost there to the point where they're kind of like, oh, well, yeah, that's easy. We can do 5. That's not a big deal. See, that's what I mean by future pacing is kind of setting expectations of here's what you should expect. And for me, I like to under promise and over deliver, or in this scenario, have it be like, okay, expect them to come back and want you to rebuild your whole house. And then when I come back and go, hey, they just want a new furnace. Hopefully the seller's like, oh, well, we can do that. That's not a problem. Now, let me tell you on the flip side though, when I'm representing a buyer, the way I'm going to future pace them is I tell them, hey, the home inspector is going to go out and do an inspection, and they're going to come back with the inspection, and it's going to have a whole bunch of like under plumbing, there's probably going to be some things that they are going to recommend. Under the electrical, there's going to be some things they recommend. Under the heating, there may be some issues on drainage. Like I just will tell them there could be a bunch of things that they list out that they're going to recommend that you keep an eye on. Now, that doesn't mean we need to go and ask the seller to do all those things. And I tell the buyer this, think of it this way. We want to look for the items on an inspection that are safety, like that should have already been fixed. That's what we want to see is we want to find the things that the seller either isn't aware of, that if they were, they would have fixed it, or maybe they're aware and they just haven't gotten to it yet. But if there are safety things that are going to create a problem, we want to go ask the seller to fix them. Everything else on that home inspection list is going to be your honeydew list on Saturdays. That's going to be your list of, hey, after I buy the house on Saturdays, I've got this, here's the list of things that I need to just stay on top of. That way, when we get the home inspection, the buyer doesn't freak out because they will see it and they'll think, wow, this house looks like it's junk, like should be torn down. But instead they look at it and they will say, okay, well, let's go through and find the items that should have already been done that haven't been, and let's ask the seller to do those. The rest of the things is more of just, I tell the buyer, it's to bring you up to speed to just know, like, here's the kind of stuff to keep an eye on. It's almost like probably the way to best explain it, the way I tell it to the buyer is, I've lived in my house now for 20 years. I kind of know, hey, like, let me try to think of an example of something that, like, I've noticed on one of my windows, there's some condensation between the panes of the window. So I kind of know, all right, probably gonna have to look at changing some of that. My roof is 20 years old. We had the home built, it's 20 years old. The roof's gonna need to be done probably in the next few years. So I just kind of already know that. The idea of a home inspection is to bring that buyer who's now new to the home to give them kind of the, here's what to expect going forward on your house. And I just will tell a buyer, part of owning a home is you're gonna have maintenance. You're gonna have things you have to do on it. So just know that that's gonna be part of the process. So that's future facing. Make sense? All right, next. I think we're on G, right? All right, next then is let's do negotiating. I probably should have numbered these instead of letters. What letter do I have to get to have what's the 12th letter of the alphabet? Everybody's A, B, C, D. L? All right. We'll keep going until we get to L. All right. So negotiate. How good are you at negotiating? Now, remember, I already mentioned to you, I'm going to give you some books that I would recommend that you read throughout this week. If you have not read Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, you need to read that. And it's a great book on negotiating. Chris Voss is the author, Never Split the Difference, okay? So if you haven't read that, do that. How good are you at negotiating? And so rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on that. How good am I at negotiating? If you need to get better at it, then start by reading Never Split the Difference. But here's what I will tell you. In terms of negotiating, it is really all about calling and asking the other side questions. Call and ask questions to find out what's important to them. So if you're writing an offer, here's what is amazing to me. It is not uncommon right now in the market, list a property and get 20 offers. Of those 20 offers, I asked an agent within the last few weeks, I asked an agent, how many of the 20 offers that you got did the other agent call you and talk to you about it versus just emailed it over? And I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, but 2 or 3 of the agents called. The other 17 or 18 just sent their offer. That's not negotiating, by the way. Negotiating is you call and say, hey, we're going to be writing an offer. What is your seller looking for? What would the ideal offer need to look like? See, I'll even do that in terms of, even when the market's not like it is now, when you're calling up, when your buyer has five places to choose from, and they can probably go in and negotiate the price down versus an up right now, I still always call the seller's agent and say, what's your client looking for? What would the ideal thing need to look like? What's most important to the seller? Because not always is price most important. So especially in today's market, you're probably going to get an offer that's above list price that it's not going to appraise for that anyway. So if I'm on the listing side and I get an offer in that looks like that, I'm going to be saying to my seller, let's go with the one most likely to close. Yes, maybe above list price, but we don't necessarily want to go with the one 50,000 above because it might not be the one that closes. And it's probably not going to appraise for that anyway. So that's what we're talking about in terms of negotiating. Call and find out what is most important to the seller. I actually just had one that my son is an agent. For you guys that don't know, my oldest is an agent here. And he was telling me about an offer that they were getting accepted. And the reason they were going to get their offer accepted over everyone else is because the sellers wanted those buyers to get the house. Because they had written a letter like, it's our first home, we're newly married or whatever. They had written all this stuff and the people got it, related to the letter that they had written and said, they're the ones we want to have the house. And so the agent called and said, we want your buyers to get the house. Can we structure your offer to look like this? Yep, okay. So that's what I mean by negotiating is call, develop some rapport with the listing agent and find out more information about them and have them want you to be the agent you're going to work with. So let me give you one other idea on it. Look up the agent's production. And if they have done a bit of production and have been in the business for a while and you're a newer agent, call and feed into the ego of the agent. So call the listing agent and say things like, hey, Christian, hey, I noticed before I wrote the offer, I noticed you've been in the business for a while and you've done a ton of business. I would sure love to learn from you. Like, if there's any way we can put this deal together, I would love to just learn anything I can from you so that I can become the type of, now you can't oversell it, but kind of sell to the ego of the agent of, man, I would just love to learn from you of how you have been as successful as you are in the business and what I could learn in the deal from you. Because honestly, most agents, if you did that, if they've been in the business for a while and done a bunch of business, is going to be like, yeah, I like this guy. He'll listen to what I got to say, and this will be a smooth transaction because he wants to learn from me. So that's what I mean by negotiating. How good are you at that? Okay, so rate yourself. All right. Next is price reductions. Now, like I said, right now in today's market, this probably isn't as crucial, but I think we're going to start seeing it. Interest rates are starting to go up. I think we're going to start seeing more properties come on. But more important is I think sellers are now getting a little out in the fantasy land on what their house is worth. They're going to start listing them a little bit high. So how good are you at getting price reductions? Well, part of that ties back to our future pacing. When you list a property, it's talking to them and saying, okay, look, this is how the market works. And here's how I do it. I tell the seller, my job is to interpret the market for you. I'm an interpreter of the market. So the market's going to speak to us in encrypted language. I'm here to interpret that for you as the seller to help you understand what the market is trying to tell you, okay? So that's part of the future pacing in terms of getting price reductions, okay? I'm gonna pick up the pace a little bit here. All right, next is, where did I say I had to get to? L?
Yeah.
All right, I'm trying to do it without looking at my notes, but all right, next then is customer service. Let's do that. Oops, I'm not doing real well here. All right, customer service. So, and I struggle on remember the name of this book every time. There's a great book that I can never remember the name of it. I need to actually put that on my notes so that I can remember every time. I can see the cover and everything. But it's about customer service and about exceeding people's, gosh, what the heck? I'll look it up and I'll get it for you tomorrow. But how good is your customer service? Here's what I've found. A lot of agents will do really good at setting appointments or going and getting a listing, but they don't get much repeat referral business. This business should get better and easier, maybe not better, easier, the longer you're in the business. And if it doesn't get easier for you, the longer you're in the business, your customer service skills are hurting you. So how good are you at giving service to the customers after you get them? I remember going out on a listing presentation early on in my career. It was for sale by owner. And I remember they were wanting to way overprice their property. So I came back to the office and an agent said to me, hey, did you get the listing? And I said, no, they were way overpriced and I just didn't want to deal with it. And there was another agent in the office that said, who was it? I'll take it. I want it. And I started questioning myself. Maybe I should have gone and taken that listing. Well, what I found actually, the longer I was in the business, is that guy would take any listing at any price. And the way that he operated is he would go plant his sign in their front yard. He would never call them again unless an offer showed up. And he was the stereotypical one that people complain about agents, that he listed their home and they would never hear from him again. So early on, I was like, oh, maybe I should have taken a listing. I realize now, yeah, let those type of people have those type of listings, and then I'll take it after they don't get it sold, and then I'll go back and take that listing. What? Yeah, I'll take it as the expired listing. All right, so how good are you at customer service? All right, next. Look at my notes. What am I forgetting? Oh, yeah. Handling objections. How good are you at handling objections? So when you go out on listing appointments, or with a buyer, you show them properties, what's going to happen is people are going to say to you, we want to think about it. How good are you at being able to handle that? Oh, which I also just remembered, you guys that are on Zoom, make sure you put in first and last name with your office in the chat box. I forgot to tell you guys to do that at the start of the class. So throw in first and last name and the office that you're in so that I have a record of who is there. You would think I would have thought of that after I asked each of you guys to, hey, here's the clipboard, sign in. But all right, so how good are you at handling objections? Here's the good news. There's only about 10. There's really only about 10 objections that you're going to get in this business. So you only got to come up with how are you going to handle it when somebody says, we want to think about it? Well, just come up with how are you going to respond when they say they want to think about it? And once you come up with that, then and ideally, I would say come up with 2 or 3 ways to handle when somebody says we want to think about it so that you can handle those objections. All right, which we'll talk more about some of that and go through some more of those things as we go. All right. Next is, what am I forgetting? Oh, yeah, here we go. Work with highly qualified buyers. So that's a skill, is working with highly qualified buyers. So remember I talked about pre-qualifying, and it's not necessarily about what they can afford, what the loan officer will give them a loan for, although that is part of it. The other piece of highly qualified buyers, which we will talk about this, we're going to do, I think it's on Monday next Monday, we're going to go through and I'm going to talk to you on the buyer presentation and how to figure out who, if they are a highly qualified buyer, what that looks like. So ultimately, think of it this way, is that they have needs that can be met. Kind of, that's how I'll say it for now, is they have needs and they can be met, that it's realistic, okay? So working with highly qualified buyers, and then the last one, right? Is this the last one?
Yeah.
Is closing. How good are you at closing? Meaning asking for the business. So we talked about presentations. The natural ending to a good presentation is the close. So if you do it right, your presentation at the end, it should just be natural to close and to have that take place. All right. So those are the 12 skills. We're going to go through and we'll talk about those in more detail throughout the week. So know that we're going to hit on those a lot more. All right. Number 6, right? Last one, and then we'll wrap it up here, is this. So the 6th thing on this foundation is systems, tools, and strategies. Systems, tools, and strategies. So the other thing that George found is that the top producing agents all have systems or tools that they use and certain strategies that they will follow. And so I'm going to give you some ideas on some tools and systems that you can use as part of your business. And we will go through these a little bit over this week or next week, but in more detail in other classes, okay? So in terms of systems and things, the system I would recommend that you guys use for your database is Zap. The Zap system is company provided to you, and it is a way for you to keep track of your database of people, your sphere of influence, you'll hear, or you'll hear me refer to it as SOI or your database. But I would say get familiar with the Zap system. So if you haven't attended any of the classes that I teach on that, make sure you get into that so that you can learn how to do it, because Zap is one that I would recommend that you use for keeping track of your database, okay? And I will cover that more next Thursday. We'll cover a little bit on Zap.
Hey, Russ, real quick.
Yeah.
When you say you recommend that, I'm kind of hearing that you're saying, I recommend that over something. And what I'm seeing in some of the systems I'm slowly getting familiar with is there's a lot of redundancy. So does this have more positives than some of the other systems?
Yes. So, and for me, yes. So to answer your question, yes. The reason I like the Zap system the best is There's one tool in there contained inside of the Zap system that I think is the best marketing thing you can do to your database, which is why I recommend it over the others. So yeah, we do have other options that are company provided, but I feel like Zap is the best. And I'll show you that actually as part of the SOI part that we'll do next Thursday.
Great.
Yep. All right, the next one is, and all of these tools that we're going to talk about right now, our systems, are on 21 Online, okay? So Zap, and the next one is Toolkit CMA. That's the one that I would recommend as far as like an actual leave behind for a presentation is Toolkit CMA. Toolkit CMA has basically just tons of information that's about Century 21, and like things that would look good as a I don't know if handouts, right? A booklet or something that you could give to a buyer or a seller. And so if you're wanting to use something like that, Toolkit CMA is what I recommend. I actually personally don't take one of those out when I'm going on a listing presentation because I just feel like you are the presentation. You don't need all the stuff if you do it right. But if you want it, and to me, it's a great leave behind or a before I come out, take a look at some information. Toolkit CMA is great for that. Okay. Let's see. The next one in the other system that I would recommend you get familiar with is Golden Ruler. Golden Ruler is, again, all of this is on 21online.com, but Golden Ruler is a system that tracks the number of views that a seller gets on their property, and it will email to them. You can have it set up to either go once a week, you can have it go every other week, or you can have it go once a month. I would recommend set it up to go once a week where it's just going to email to your seller, here's the number of views we've had online on your property. Then as you call them, you can update them about it. But Golden Ruler, you just go in and set it up for the seller for it to email to the seller the frequency that you want it to go, and then you kind of can forget about it. And I mean, you don't necessarily want to forget about it, but kind of can forget about it because they'll just automatically do it on its own. Then as you call your seller, you're just saying, hey, just want to make sure you got the email that I sent about the views we've had online, stuff like that. Okay. All right, the next one is unique property websites. The unique property website is every time we list a property, Century 21 will create a domain for that property. And so it's just the address of the property.c21.com, but it is actually, you could use that to go market the property now to where people could go on, they could look at the pictures, they could print a flyer. There's a video, a YouTube video that they can watch that takes the pictures, and then they actually even take it and somebody is doing a voice recording of it, of the listing and saying, this property features 5 bedrooms or whatever. So, that's through the unique property website, okay? And then the last one is, and I'm going blank on the name of it for a second here. We probably ought to say dot loop too, actually. Yeah, thank you. We'll throw dot loop up there as well. Dot loop is what we use for all of our transactions. So yeah, thank you. No, this one is for preferred client club. There we go. The last one is called Preferred Client Club. And this doesn't have to be for past clients. You can do this for anybody. But it's a cool tool that we have for your database again, that you can put the people onto this Preferred Client Club. What happens then is you pay, and I can't remember the exact amount, but it's between 25, well, you have 3 different options. And the low end is about 25 bucks, might be 35 bucks. The high end is like $78. And you can then have a, and it has, I think, 5 touches that it does to the people that they put on there. And the 2-year plan is that 25 or 35 bucks. I can't remember if it's 25 or 35, but it'll send 5 things to them every year for 2 years. For 50 bucks-ish, it does it for 5 years, and for 70 something, it does it for 7 years, where it'll send out, it sends a calendar from you every year, it sends some type of a greeting card kind of a thing. And then it sends 3 times this magazine 3 times a year that has your picture and everything on it, kind of like a Better Homes and Gardens type of a magazine, but it comes from you and has your information on it. But dirt cheap for what you get for that. So anyway, that's one of the other tools that I would, or systems that I would recommend you use. So, all right, questions? Comments? Okay,
Hey, Russ,
yes.
you mentioned that this class is going on Thursday or tomorrow, or when did you say?
So yeah, so we'll do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week.
Same time, same Zoom?
Yep,
Okay,
everything's the same. Thanks, Karen.
no worries, just wanted to clarify that.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, well, hey, thanks for being here. So tomorrow we're gonna do business planning, so we'll talk about goals, plan, and schedule is what we have on track for tomorrow, so. Sound good?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for being here, guys.